Hi. Well, some of the biggest risks that I've taken in my life are the relocations that I've made. I've relocated about 4 or 5 times to places where I didn't know anybody, so I was going to talk about some of those relocations and some of the adventures I've had along the way. But first, a little background about myself. I've always been kind of on the social fringe of things, never really been in the popular crowd, always kind of an outcast. And this was compounded by how I grew up. I grew up in a blue-collar town called Montebello, California. I was a lawyer's son, and this town was about, it was on the border of East Los Angeles, so it was about 75% Latino and about 25% Asian, and one Jewish white kid, which was me. It didn't help that the one Jewish white kid was a fat theater geek. I think I was the only kid in my school that really cared about what was opening and closing on Broadway that week. But anyway, so the first major risk I took was coming to school here at the U of A. I wanted to kind of get away from home, but not too far away. Didn't know anybody at all out here, and but I applied and I got in miraculously. And so as I said, I didn't know anybody, and I decided to go through a fraternity rush. Now that's pretty risky for a guy like myself, kind of on the social fringe. It was fairly difficult. You know, some of the jockey popular houses would kind of make fun of me behind my back, and I kind of knew it, but you just kind of go with it. You're afraid to call people on it. But eventually I found a house that was a nice mix of quirky oddballs and normal people. And that was a risk worth taking because it really made a great college experience, and some of those guys are still my best friends. Hi, Dave. But the other thing that happened in college is I took a risk and asked out a fellow social outcast, and we got married, and then got divorced 25 years later. Another story. But she's the kind of leader of the social outcasts these days. Here, she's the editor of the Tucson Weekly now. So, but in any event. So we moved, we got married and we moved to Los Angeles, where I went to law school. That wasn't as much of a risk there because my parents were there. And at the end of law school, we decided we wanted to get out of Los Angeles. You know, crime, smog, traffic, family, the worst of all. And we decided we wanted to, so we settled on 3 places. We were thinking either San Francisco, Seattle, or Phoenix. And so my 3rd-year law school, we took kind of our honeymoon up the coast on a train, and we kind of were going to decide where we were going to settle. Stopped in San Francisco, too expensive, too snooty, not our scene. Stopped in Portland, probably should have considered that actually, but we didn't. And stopped in Seattle. Seattle had kind of a nice vibe in the early 90s. We were both theater geeks. She was a theater writer at the time, and you know, Seattle's had a nice vibe. There was a lot of poor people, coffee houses, great music. So we chose Seattle. Came back, and about a month before we were going to leave, the LA riots happened, and there was rioting and looting on our streets and tanks everywhere. So didn't help our move. But we didn't help our decision to leave, right? But we eventually I finished law school. We packed all our things in a truck, and we went up there. Now, the journey was kind of very great learning experience for me because my wife's cousin came up at the time. Her name is Jill. And Jill was kind of driving with my wife. I drove our U-Haul truck to kind of help us out. But we went to this gay bar in Hollywood. And, you know, this was, let me different time. It was late 80s, early 90s. My dad was a great guy, but he was kind of a man of his time, a little on the homophobic side. So I was kind of making jokes and cracks the whole time. And my wife's cousin was getting really mad at me the whole way up the coast, and I don't really understand why. Now, she had this best friend, but, you know, back then you didn't think about these things as much. But eventually we get up to Seattle, and she tells me why she's so mad at me. We're the first ones family she comes out to. So learned a lesson in tolerance and being an idiot, but which stayed with me. So move up to Seattle, thinking, hey, I'll pass the bar and I'll get a job. You know, I'll be a lawyer. Very naively thought that, and I couldn't get a job because everybody else thought that. So first job I took was working, doing the only thing I knew how to do from here. When I was here, I worked at the JCC in the preschool, so I got a job teaching preschool with 24-year-olds, and I would come home every day and tell my wife, we're never having kids. Didn't happen, Rocky, but we Eventually I got my first job. It was a job in a prosecutor's office, completely unpaid. But I had to learn how to be a lawyer, so I took it and didn't really get any training, jumped in. Did that for about 9 months. Ultimately they told me that they weren't going to hire me because they needed to hire a minority, which they did. And so I moved on from there. And then I hooked up with a guy from I got his employment thing at a law school, and he was referring like traffic cases, like licensing cases. He had like commercials on like truck driver stations. So I was doing like suspended license cases and DUIs. And I was taking a little bit of upfront money, and for a while it was going okay. And this guy, something rubbed me the wrong way about the guy. I couldn't put my finger on it, and this was pre-internet. You know, this was early 90s. You couldn't check out people. And this guy wanted me to move down to his office. They had an open office. Somebody told me not to. So one night I get a call from him, and it's an emergency. He leaves a message at midnight. I call him back, I never hear from him. So I find out what the cases stopped, so I'm doing the cases, but I've taken the money, so I'm kind of drowning a bit. But I find out what happened to the guy. I find out that he was an ex-con that jumped off the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And he was an ex-con because he had broken into the governor's mansion in Washington State. So that was kind of the end of that. And then I took a job in a family law firm. And again, I needed the work. Now this firm, it was the kind of thing you see on late night TV. You know, have your family been torn apart? You'll see pictures getting torn apart. So I took the job, and they didn't take retainers, they took payments, and there's literally a bodyguard that would make the collections. And the receptionists were actually strippers. But you know, I learned the business, did family law, but no surprise this firm folded after a while. And then I took a job in a place called Wenatchee, Washington. Now the other thing about Seattle at the time is it had changed from this cool place where everybody's young and poor to everybody's rich on paper because of the .com thing. So you're like, well, everybody knows somebody who's a millionaire on paper, why aren't I a millionaire? So when the bust happened, I had a little Shawshank there. But in any event, so I moved to this place called Wenatchee. Wenatchee is a small town, about 60,000 people. It's a great place to be if you're white, straight, Christian, and conservative. White, well, Jewish, kinda. Straight, yeah. Conservative, definitely not. But we found a little niche there at the beginning and met some people, but they all moved away as people that weren't like that in Wenatchee did. But again, it was a risk. We moved there not knowing anybody, and it paid off in I ended up staying there 10 years, and it paid off in a couple of ways. I got involved in theater. Never would have done that if I was in a big city. A lot of small towns do a production every year. I tried out thinking, maybe I'll get backstage or something. I got one of the big parts. That was cool. I'd always been involved in politics, but I got talked into running for state senate as a Democratic candidate, so that was really cool. And I met my best friend. Again, she's the first one in the firm that came out to me, and eventually got her down here, which is great. But one quick Wenatchee story. One thing that they did over there they don't do in Tucson is they would try to put kids in detention for missing school, for truancy. And one day I had a kid that they were trying to put in jail, and he had a defense. He said, well, I missed school that day because there was a call for people not to go to school because of immigration issues. There was an immigration rally in 2006. There were kind of marches and rallies everywhere. So the prosecutor, so I tell the judge that, the prosecutor says, Mr. Zinman, you know, there was no such call to do that. And I said, Your Honor, I marched in a rally myself with my son. I saw it on CNN. And so the judge says, and this is a risk because I was kind of scared, but you stand up sometimes. He's like, so Mr. Zinman, are you saying that people should be able to stay here illegally? And I said, well, Your Honor, I believe in the McCain fine goal act in my audience, which gives them counts of citizenship. And he said, oh, so you're saying if they caught, they should stay here. And then I'm like, Your Honor, then I kind of got on my high horse. And like, you know, these folks are necessary to our economy. You know, they do the job no one wants to do, and you know, they're a good thing. So he's like, tells the prosecutor, well, I'll put him in the detention if you want me to. And she didn't, because that was the only day he missed. So that was kind of a flavor of Wenatchee. But then at one point, my wife at the time was just sick of it. She's like, I can't take this anymore. You got to take the bar, and we got to move down to Tucson. And you know, your wife tells you that you got to do that. So I took the bar, moved down here, and one final story on my move down here. We were in put our things in a U-Haul truck, and we were driving down here. We stopped in Las Vegas, and you know, we saw shows there with my family. But then I'm like, hey, I'm in Las Vegas. I'm gonna have a good time. You know, put my family to sleep. And I went across the streets to New York, and I was in the dual piano bar there, smoking a cigar, having a drink, singing 80s songs at the top of my lungs. I'm like, wow, this is paradise. and the singer says, everybody get down on the floor now. I'm like, huh, what? He's like, get down if you want to live. So everybody hits the floor, and it's completely silent for like 20 minutes, and people are like, shh, get down, get down. You don't know what's going on. Eventually, the police escort everybody out of the casino, and I still don't know what's going on. I come back to my room, I turn on CNN, there was a sniper on the mezzanine shooting at people in the casino. He hit a couple people, they fortunately lived. So that was my introduction to Tucson. And the final risk was moving down here. We decided to make the move before I had a job, but I fortunately got a job in the public defender's office that I loved before we came down here. And I'll just kind of wrap up. A lot of things happened down here. I got cancer, got cured, got divorced, dated over 40 women, and I've actually, it's interesting. There's a lot of different people out there, gay, straight, trans, questioning, but I think I've discovered a new sexuality, involuntarily celibate. So, thank you.